So we are right back with the first presentation of this conference by Martin Treder, who do have an experience of 27 years in the field of data. So we are right back with the first presentation in the field of data analytics, and his presentation will be quite insightful for you because he is not even a data evangelist, but he do have a successful career in the corporate. He's been working in different organizations. Right now, he is working as an information domain officer honor in Boehringer, and along with this, he is also working. He's an co-author. He's an author of a book by the name of CDO Management Handbook. So, without further ado, we will be going to start a presentation from Martin Treder.
Hi there, my name is Martin Treder. I'm going to talk to you about accelerating data in digital transformation. First of all, I would like to check whether data and digital are actually the same thing. Sometimes people try to use those terms interchangeably. Well, they are not interchangeable. So let's have a closer look. First of all, there's a difference between data, which is the foundation, and digitization, which is one of its usages. Let's look at the activities of a company, as various different, big, small, long-term, short-term activities. Digitization can be part of each of them. Data is the foundation without which none of them can work. So, where does data take place and where does digital take place? Well, it all starts with data from the point of entry up to the point where it's going to be used. Entry means data from external sources, it means data from your partners, but it also means data that your employees may have key entered or scanned. You would then have to validate data. Data needs to be checked and it needs to be compared and checked for consistency. You would have to classify the data so that you know how it all plays together and what the logic behind the data is. You need to manage the quality of the data, which is an ongoing activity that you will never have finished. You will do some data housekeeping, think GDPR, think data that you collect and collect and collect, and then finding information is searching for the needle in a haystack. And obviously, adding more hay doesn't make the search for the needle easier. Finally, you will use the data. And these are all the applications, all the use cases where you can apply data, and then you call it digitization. If you skip the first steps, you end up with something like this. And this is not really sustainable, because all the steps before that ensure that your data is really good are missing. And that one really hurts. And using bad data will not give you good results. Remember, garbage in, garbage out. So now that we understand what data in digital looks like, do we really need to accelerate it, or does it just happen? Let's have a look at typical boardroom. Management boards announce that, yeah, their companies go digital, and they announce all these buzzwords that they have read or heard somewhere just to be in the front line of modernization. And they are running those projects, and you can read them in the papers, and the CIO or the CEO gives fancy interviews about the successes and the modernization. and lots of software is added and departments are added. So really something is happening. But does that turn companies into what we call data-driven organizations? Let's have a look. An ISG survey not too long ago found out that just 15% of digitization projects are actually considered successful. And Gartner has made it a habit to analyze AI projects and find that most of them fail. They don't deliver against business expectations. While the CEOs are fans and the CIOs are fans of digitization, the CFOs are asking, what's the return on investment? Where are we? Where are we earning money? Right? And at the same time, the really important decisions are not based on data or on intelligence. They are based on gut feeling, or as the leaders would call it, executive experience. So I have looked around, tried to understand organizations, and from what I've seen, I came to 7 gaps that we observe in organizations today. The first one is the executive understanding. Yeah, everybody knows the buzzwords, everybody has heard them, and everybody uses them, but do they really know what this is about, or are they supporting it because everybody is expecting them to do so? The second gap is a lack of a central authority in data in digitization matters. Every department, every function, they all do this on their own and are surprised that it doesn't fit together and that activities are duplicated and absolutely inefficient. So the local optimum never results in the overall optimum if you put all of them together. The third one, very often underestimated, data literacy, understanding what this is about across the workforce, not only the specialists. There's a difference between being able to use a PlayStation controller and programming it. So somebody who seems to be a digital native does not necessarily understand what's going on behind the technology wall. Point 4, a data and digitalization vision and a strategy. What are we heading towards? Where do we want to stand in 5 years from now, and how we are approaching that? If we don't set that up, we will never have a good guidance for people. We may have to adjust to improve and to be flexible as things change. But at any time, we should have a currently valid data and digitization vision and strategy. Number 5, business ownership of data. No, data is not owned by IT or by some techies or by the analytics department. No, if you're working in a business department, you have to own your data. Not only the content, but also the structure and the logic of the data. If you don't do that, who else should do that? Who should know the data and bring it together with the underlying business logic? It can only happen within the business functions. Point 6, sharing between departments. Data is not something that is private to single departments. The knowledge shouldn't be either, and the experience should be shared to prevent people from repeating the errors of the department next door. Finally, what I call one. You want to have one glossary, not various glossaries, because various glossaries don't help. You want to have one data model, one way of bringing all the meanings of the words together, one truth. What is the valid value of anything? That needs to be clear and unambiguous. And one set of standards, how you work, how you decide, or how all these things just belong together. Okay, there are good reasons to accelerate if we think we should accelerate. But why should we accelerate? Let's start with a few reasons that you shouldn't accept. Everybody talks about it. Is that a valid reason? Would we do it because everybody else does it? No, certainly not. We cannot afford to stay behind. Maybe that's true, but it's not a reason to do it because you don't know behind what. We will find reasons as we move ahead. This is a typical approach of we need to find a solution and we will take care of the problems that fit that solution later. It really doesn't make sense. Finally, our customers expect us to be digital. Yes, fine, they do, in fact, but don't focus on looking digital. All those companies that set up their digital innovation centers and have their fancy interviews in magazines, it's all to look digital. What does it bring you? Nothing. Customer will buy where customer finds value for money, not where glossy buildings are set up and chief digitization or innovation officers are being introduced. To understand where we are, we may have to look back. Think back the 18th century where technology wasn't that advanced, but we have had great mathematicians during that phase and even earlier who were ahead of their time. Blaise Pascal wished he had had semiconductors to build the computers for which he had laid the theoretical foundation. It may have taken around until mid of last century, where technology had more or less caught up. And yeah, we can debate a decade more or less, right? That's where we had the first computers and the first applications to use them, and so on and so on. And where are we today? Technology is ahead of application. We have things like RFID, like blockchain, like quantum computing. Does quantum computing allow us to do a lot of things? Do we see a lot of fascinating solutions around blockchain other than cryptocurrency? No, the technology and the logic and all of that is there. Now people are trying to find problems that these solutions help to solve. So let's look at this and draw the right conclusions. First one, just using the latest tech makes you a laggard, right? You're using something that somebody else has used before. Where's the innovation? You're too late. Others have done that before. Digitization often means catching up with technology. Adding tech is not a problem. You can buy it at a shop around the corner. But making intelligent use of these technologies, that is what I call intelligent digitization. Thirdly, try to be ahead of technological progress. If it's the other way around, you look modern and you are not. I'm not a fan of Elon Musk, for example, but if he had waited for technology to become available, they would still be waiting for, say, the perfect rocket, right? And maybe in 100 years from now, somebody would say, look, we have nice rockets. How about flying to the moon or to the Mars? He did it the other way around. He thought, we may wish to fly to Mars. What do we need to do to get there? Okay, we want to do data and we want to do digital. Get into the queue, wait until it's our turn. we have to make clear that data and digital are not simply competing with other initiatives. They are part of everything. So you wouldn't do either or. You would do other things through data and digital. So digitalization is impossible without professional data handling. Decision-making requires data if you want to take good decisions, right? And important, it's not about replacing CEOs. A CEO wouldn't approve a project that aimed at replacing that CEO, of course, but supporting them because it enables them to make better decisions. Understanding all the other parties around you, your customers, suppliers, everybody, you need to have data about them, and you need systematic data. Things like predictive maintenance requires experience from previous cases from which you can derive if this happens, then that is going to happen and we need to do something earlier to prevent it from happening. And in general, if you think about correlation and causality between different factors, which a lot of this is about, then you need to be able to formulate if-then statement. If this pipe heats and that area has a high humidity, then this may be exposed to certain powers and may fail. How do you know? You need data to prove your point. Eventually, it is not competing. It is helping others. And if others say they want to do their job first, they are missing an opportunity. And it's up to us to convince them of that fact. By the way, if somebody knows who has a copyright for this fantastic conglomerate here, let me know. I'm happy to pay royalties to be able to show this fantastic picture. Now, who should actually accelerate the digital transformation? First of all, it won't happen on its own. It really needs to get orchestrated. Companies simply don't work like anthills where you wonder how it all works without the single boss or somebody with a sufficient level of authority. People in your organization need guidance. They need rules, and there must be something in it for them. They need to see a reason, and then they will support you. That means whenever you want to move digitization forward, it needs to get governed. And what does it start with? It starts at the top, whether you like it or not. You need a mandate and a leader. So what type of leader do you need? Chief Digital Officer, Chief Acceleration Officer, Chief Data Analytics and Digital Officer, whomever. It really doesn't matter what the title is. What you need is a mandate, the power to execute together with a vision to show what we are aiming at. And finally, you need the empathy so that you can react to people's feelings. They will not all happily follow it, even if the mandate and vision are convincing. And a strong digital leader doesn't do it all on his or her own. It is somebody who leverages what I call the corporate brain. The hundreds or thousands of brains who together have far better ideas than one single digital leader, no matter how intelligent and clever that person is. So the executive mandate and the broad support from the workforce together will make digitization successful. You need to ensure that everybody is on board. So you have the leader, and now you have to convince the employees. And I'm thinking of three main principles here. Right? First is that digital transformation is an attitude. Right? It's not something that you start and end and then you have transformed. It's something that's within you that drives you and everybody else. Secondly, It is not a department or a person that's responsible. It's part of every role, really, every role. And thirdly, you need to encourage creativity. If people are afraid of failing, they will not be creative. And honesty is an important aspect when addressing people's concerns. People may think, oh, we have been successful for decades. Why on earth should we change? You wouldn't tell them stories. You would just tell them that the world outside is changing whether we want it or not. And if the world outside is changing and we are not changing, then we will fall behind. Will it take my job? You will hear that a lot. And remember, you have heard that when the first robots were developed, people were afraid of losing their job. And it's not okay to tell them that it won't. But you have to tell them the full story. Yes, it may cost a number of jobs, those that a computer can do in a far better, more reliable and cheaper way than humans. But at the same time, it will create new jobs, as all other innovation phases in history have done. The second point to consider is, if you don't transform, if you don't become digital, your company will be out of business. And that costs 100%. Will I be able to comprehend all of this? Oh, this is new, this is complicated, this is difficult. Don't tell people that it isn't. It is. But thank goodness, nobody has to know everything. Everybody finds his or her role in this. And not everybody has to understand the algorithms or know how to do software development. And if you offer support, then people may gain trust and engage. How should we accelerate the digital transformation? Have a look back, some 14 years, when the RFID hype came up. Right? The first transponders of a tiny size were published, and people said, these ones are going to solve world's hunger and everything that we have trouble with today, right? You remember that probably. Particularly barcodes were expected to go away because a transponder will hardly be far more expensive, and barcode is printed, it's just old-fashioned, and this one is really, really new. Would you want to stay behind? Oh, many said, I don't want to stay behind. At that time, I was working for DHL Express, and I was responsible for barcoding and labels. And then I gave an interview to a magazine, and I told them I will not replace barcodes on packages for the next 10 years. Right? And people weren't able to believe it. They just said, oh, and you see, this is China, Italy, the Netherlands, they all stared at that in disbelief, and look at the photo on the Dutch article. Right? They said, oh, DHL failed. And now look at 2021. The hype is over. RFID has found its applications. It makes sense, and it's really, really good to have RFID technology available. But on labeling of transport packages, nothing. Back then, 6 months after I had given that interview, I had formally introduced this global transport label for all of DHL Express around the world. And since then, hardly any day has passed with less than 1 million of these labels being printed. It was based on data, it was based on dozens of standards, and it allowed for interoperability. So it's really, really innovative. And such as DHL, all the others are still using barcodes on labels. It hasn't stopped digitalization, but differently from how people had expected it to go. Right? What can we learn? First of all, focus on the business problem. The business problem was not one that RFID could solve in that DHL example. And RFID would have offered less for more money. So that wouldn't have been a good case. Don't simply translate your current solutions, right? If you replace a barcode by an RFID tag, you haven't improved the process. You have just replaced something with something else. New must be superior to old. An RFID tag has to be better than a barcode. It has to add value. Just being more digital doesn't do the trick. And very important, digitalization is about logic, about efficiency, about processes, not necessarily about technology. What I've learned back then, standardization is key, because digitalization means interacting between parties in an efficient way. And if parties don't understand each other, there's no point. So they need to speak the same language. And that's what's called standardization. Finally, accept dead-end streets, right? If you determine a wrong road, if you see that you have engaged on the wrong topic, have the courage to stop and restart. Escalation of commitment, i.e. sticking to what you have started just because you don't want to let go, that's a bad advice. Finally, how should we organize the digital transformation? Keep your knowledge in-house. This is an advice that I would like to give you wholeheartedly. Of course, it's okay that you outsource supplementary services, standard things, the bread and butter things that are not part of your core competencies. Somebody else has specialized on that, buy it from them. But your core expertise and data and digital should be part of your core expertise. That needs to be in-house. And it has to come from in-house. People from within your organization need to develop the ideas and execute them, not somebody from outside who cannot really relate to that. So, yeah, get in external support to understand technology, to understand how other companies do that. Consultants are great for that. Great to ramp up, but don't let them execute permanently. Conflicting targets. You will have this triangle, whatever you do in digitalization. You will have the parties who aim at sustainability. They do this long-term planning and have a 10 years horizon. Then you have those that just want to quickly do something, just my schedule counts and I want to deliver on time. And finally, you have the CFOs that say, you need to get value for money. And if it doesn't pay off, I will give you the funding. Those three cannot be achieved at the same time. So you have to balance. And that is something that requires a strong leadership. Don't focus on the fancy stuff. Think back what I said about data, the 6 steps of data, the first 5 of which were hard work without seeing good results. And only the 6th step is generating visible benefits. So focus on the ordinary stuff, the fixing, where things don't work as they should today. Then optimize, where things actually work as they should do, but you see they could work more efficiently. Just as the winglets on planes. Planes were flying without winglets before, but with them, they consume less fuel and they have CO2 emissions reduced. So it's really, really important improvement. And then finally, you can think of transformation. You can say, don't try to improve what we're doing today. Do something new, like a fast plane that flies in 30, 40, 50 miles up there, not the ordinary 30,000 feet. Transformation sounds like something that you do and then you stop once you are transformed. Don't believe in that to be a once-off activity. You need an organization that is ready for permanent transformation. It consists of executives who have the mandate to execute, who really can decide what to do across the organization. You need central teams, not many, not big teams. I'm not a fan of centralizing everything. Strong teams need to be out there as well. But the small teams that you have centrally need to be really good and to be perceived as support. Direction, I mentioned that before. You need your vision. You need a mission that tells you, what do I want to achieve by when, and then the strategy, what are the aspects of implementation, and finally a concrete plan that you may change whenever necessary, but don't forget to have the currently valid plan at any time. Then data governance, standards. Everybody needs to agree how to do things, how to come to decisions, how to execute things, because you don't want to discuss this in every case. Finally, a network of savvy and motivated people. People across the organization need to be willing to work together, exchange information, try to share where they have failed so that others don't repeat the errors. This is really, really essential for successful digitization. Finally, my advice, define the target first, then plan the route. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Martin, for such a live presentation. Thank you so much for being a part of our conference. It's been an honor to have you. The way you have discussed all the aspects of the data and different avenues of the data that you have discussed with us is just phenomenal. Thank you so much. And I hope this presentation has added some value on all the representatives, all the attendees who've been the part of this conference. It's an honor for you that you have given time to us. Thank you so much. Now we are moving towards our next presentation, which will be given by Ido Boehringer, who is working as Chief Information Officer and Chief Data Officer in ALAL. I hope that this presentation will also create a great landmark in your careers and add value in your professional career and in your knowledge as well. Thank you so much. We will be coming back within few minutes with the presentation of Ido Boehringer. Thank you so much.